Well, hello, my friends, and welcome once more to the Invisible College. Now, today is going to be rather different. I woke up this morning, I decided I felt like doing an impromptu talk. I haven't done one of those for quite a while. I'm working on other stuff. I'm working very hard actually on a number of different projects, but I felt like I ought to be talking to you in all seriousness, because we're living in very, very dangerous times. Now, I know if you're like me, you probably go on YouTube and you have a look here and there, and it's full of doom and gloom. I mean, yes, of course, you can find things how to connect up plumbing or do the electric wiring on your house or gardening. There's all sorts of stuff on YouTube, masses of it. But there's also an awful lot of political stuff coming through at the moment. Very worrying about wars, war in Ukraine, war in Israel, bombing in Iran, and other wars brewing elsewhere, about almost a licking of the lips in terms of considering new possibilities for weapons. What can we do with robots? What can we do with more drones? What can we do with underwater drones? And, nuclear problems, well, we'll cope with that. We'll saber rattle back. All that's going on. And you probably noticed that people divide into camps, don't they? Those who are very pro-Russia. Russia's going to win. They're going to defeat NATO. They're going to take back Ukraine, and they're going to stop the globalists. There's that attitude. There's the other attitude that says, brave little Ukraine. It's the David against the Goliath of Russia. And we have to support them and help them as best we can without getting too involved and starting World War III. So that's going on. Earthquakes, huge ones. Great big one off Kamchatka recently, but there's been other ones, and we got volcanoes bubbling up in Italy. Who knows? Is Mount Vesuvius going to blow again, or that other one that's near it, Campo something or other? Is that going to blow up? Is it going to take out half of Europe? Well, something to consider, isn't it? And then we got the immigration crisis happening all over, not just Europe, but also America. There's people in the third world countries pushing to go into first world countries where they feel life will be better, but also because they want to take them over. Or some of them do anyway. You wonder why go there, running away from where you were, if you're going to turn where you go into that again. I mean, it's crazy. And that's causing huge tensions and upsets. But I wanted to remind you that all this is predicted in the Bible. I read the Bible. I know some of you think, oh, he's into Egypt. He must be into some kind of paganism. We can't have that. Well, actually, Egypt at one time was a very, very high civilization. It was the civilization. But it went corrupt, and that's why it had to be replaced at the time of the Exodus. So you remember all that, with Moses taking the Israelites out of Egypt, taking the Ark of the Covenant with them, taking the Spirit with them, actually, even more. And I'm going to talk a bit more about that as we go on, I think. We'll see how we go with this talk. But if you read your Matthew 24, chapter 24 in the Matthew Gospel, it tells you that there will be wars and rumours of wars, and there'll be earthquakes, and there'll be all sorts of things happening, and awful things. But that's all, the birth pangs of something new that's coming to this planet. And it's going to be some kind of, on the one hand, as a kind of judgment day. If you read your Bible properly, if you read the book of Revelation, and I've done, I think, 27 or 28 lectures on that in my YouTube channel, you can watch. for free. I've done all that. And he's saying there that these things are going to happen, but he's coming back. And he's coming back this time, not as a sheep ready to be sacrificed on the cross, you know, all that, but with a rod of iron to rule the nations as king. Judgment, a sword coming out of his mouth. You should be worried about that if you're on the wrong side. Now, of course, you might be an atheist. I don't know who's watching this, and that's your business. There was a famous broadcaster called James Whale who passed away just 2 days ago, I think. And he used to boast about how he was an atheist, didn't believe any of this God claptrap. But coming up to his death, he was absolutely terrified. And I wonder what's happened to him now. Because believe me, there is a God, there is another place. You are not your body. You live in a body, but you are not it. But that's a whole other subject. And I don't want to go into that right now. But you probably noticed this picture behind me. And I'm going to say a few words about that, and a couple of other pictures I might show you as well. This was painted by my friend, a Swedish artist called Bengt Alfredson. He's a very good friend of mine, and we met first in 1971 when I went hitchhiking to Sweden. And my friend David and I stayed with him and his family for a few days, and I stayed in touch. We became very good friends, and I went over there many times, and he came over and stayed with us in England with his family. So we were very good friends, and when I was writing a book called Signs in the Sky, have I got a copy? Now this book, Signs in the Sky, if we can see it all right, was published in 2000. And it's about what I call the opening of the Stargate. Now that, you probably think, what on earth is going on? Is this something to do with SG-1, famous Stargate? Well, it's not, but it is very real nonetheless. You could call it a time portal, or time gate, or a position on a clock. That would be the best way of putting it. And it's to do with the precession of the equinoxes and how they are related to the movements of the stars, but also to the days on which the equinox occurs on the first day of spring and how that is in relation to the stars, but also the solstices, because if you slip back the equinoxes, you also slip back the solstices. Everything moves. And the Stargate, it's not me who invented that term, by the way. It was known as such by the Egyptians and the Romans and other people in antiquity. Even in America, in the Maya, they knew all about this too. You have certain constellations, and particularly the constellation of Orion, that they used to watch. And these constellations, because of the precession of the equinox, which happens because of the point where the axis of the Earth points to in the sky, moves over time. It goes round in a circle. And you can think of that as being like a wobbling motion. That's not really quite what happens, but you think of that like a spinning top that's wobbling. And so the axis of the North Pole moves and shifts. It goes backwards through the zodiac. The point moves, and it causes the first day of spring, the equinox, day of the equinox, to shift back through the zodiac. So in ancient Egyptian times, back in the Old Kingdom, we're talking about 3000 BC up to, about 1500. It was in Leo, in constellation of Leo, the summer solstice was. And that meant that the spring equinox was in the sign of Taurus, the bull, 90 degrees apart. Well, then the spring equinox moved back into Aries. So they stopped using bulls in all their symbolism. They started using rams. Ram symbolism, you see that all over the New Kingdom of Egypt. And then it shifted from there, actually before the time of Jesus, into Pisces, the fish. So then you have Piscean symbolism. One of the symbols to do with Christianity, early Christianity, was the fish. They talk about fishermen, the great fishermen. They wear hats that look like a fish's head. So we get these movements through time as the equinox shifts back, but it also shifts the solstice position. And as I said, at the time of ancient Egypt in the Old Kingdom, it was in Leo. So you have a lion sphinx. People believe now, many people do, myself included, that the head was recarved in the time of the New Kingdom to give it a pharaoh look, because it had worn over time. They, before that, it was a lion figure. And lions, or lion symbolism, features quite a lot in Egyptian art, in sculpture, and especially in the Old Kingdom times. But then it shifted from there, it goes into Cancer, and then it shifts back into Gemini. And Cancer is quite a small constellation, so it would be through that quite fast. And into Gemini, the twins. And then it moves out of the twins, and it's in between. The next one it will go into, this is summer solstice I'm talking about, would be Taurus. But in between the twins, in between those two signs, something very, very important can be seen. It can be measured rather than seen. We're not talking about stars here, we're talking about positions in the sky. Was the junction between the ecliptic, that's the pathway the sun follows through the zodiac. It goes along a line, day by day, 1 degree more or less each day. And it crosses over the plane of the Milky Way. Imagine the Milky Way is this great band of stars. We don't see it. If you live in places with a lot of light pollution, like cities, you don't see the Milky Way. But if you go out into the countryside or at sea, you'll see it, a great big splash of stars. And we're looking at it, from the edge, looking inwards or looking outwards, depending on which side of it we're looking at. And it has a sort of equator. Think of it as a flattened disk with an equator running sort of north and the south, just as the sun has, just as the earth has. So it has an equator. And that equator crosses over the pathway of the ecliptic, exactly over the hand. You think of Orion, the constellation of Orion, as reaching up, showing either holding up a club or his hand like this up to the ecliptic and to this point. Now, what's important about this, and the reason I'm bringing it up, is that the ancients always talked about this point as being the gateway to heaven. Now, we're not talking about a physical gateway. We're not talking about finding this thing in the desert. You dial it up and you go through that swoosh that they have in Stargate. No, it's not that. What it is a time portal or time measurement. And it means that the sun is at its strength, at its most powerful on that day, in the northern hemisphere anyway, on the summer solstice. You know that. The sun is at its highest peak. And that is a sign when the sun is at that portal on that day that it's a completion of a whole cycle. And it means that the winter solstice is at there's another one in the southern hemisphere, which is in Sagittarius. And that's very, very, very close to being aligned with the center of the galaxy, by the way. But that's not the point. It's aligned at the winter solstice, 21st to 22nd of December, on that day. And that was the end of the Mayan calendar in 2012 was on that day, the winter solstice one. But the summer solstice one, it was directly aligned with that on the 21st of June 2000 with the planets and the moon either side of it. And this corresponds directly with what it says at the start of the book of Revelation. Now, I'm not going to read it to you, you can read it for yourself. But it says that St. John has an apparition. You know, he's in his cave or wherever he is on Patmos, minding his own business, and suddenly he's overwhelmed by this presence that comes to him. And the presence reveals itself, it calls itself the Alpha and the Omega, the first and the last. And he's overwhelmed. He has to lie down. The presence says, "No, don't worry, it's fine." And the presence is standing amidst 7 candlesticks, which and has 7 stars, which represent the 7 angels over the 7 churches. So 777. So that is a sort of microcosmic level to this. He's told to go and warn these 7 churches, which is obviously his diocese, which are in Turkey. It wasn't called Turkey in those days, but it is now. Places like Sardis, Thyatira, there's other ones, Ephesus. They were his 7 churches, his responsibility. But there's a macrocosmic level to this as well. There's a microcosm and there's a macrocosm. This is the way people used to think in ancient Egyptian days. And that brings me to this picture, which is of this event. Here you see St. John. He's got his pen, his quill pen and his paper ready to write down what he's told. And this is the figure of the first and the last, the Alpha and the Omega, which is a Jesus Messiah figure. I want to make that clear. And he's standing amidst the 7 candlesticks, and he's holding up his hand, showing you Orion with these planets placed, with the sun and the planets around exactly as it was on that day, showing the completion of the cycle and the start of the book of Revelation. And curiously enough, chapter 4, this is all to do with the first 3 chapters. He's talking about that. Curiously enough, chapter 4 begins with the words, "Lo, a door in heaven is open." So that was the start of the book of Revelation. It came to me, I was told this. And I'd worked all this stuff, this star business out using a computer. But I wanted to go and see things for myself. And there were other significators of all this. And I wrote this book about it. And I took a party of people out to Egypt and Israel. It was partly to do with Egypt, to go and see these things. Now, earlier I'd written another book with Robert Bovell called The Orion Mystery. And I'll just hold on a second, I'll find it. Yes. And you can sum up that book really with this picture, these 2 pictures. You had the 3 pyramids of Giza, the Great Pyramids of Giza, and you had the stars of Orion. And believe me, if you superimpose that on that, they match exactly, not just vaguely, exactly. And it's very, very clear that the Egyptians were drawing our attention to Orion. And Orion was very, very important to the Egyptians. And it was not just a sideline god, the god of the dead. It was really important because that's where they believed heaven was, in Orion. They didn't think, just who knows where your spirit goes, it's going to go to heaven, have lovely dreams. No, they believed they were going to go up a notch to Orion and become stars themselves. That's what their pyramid texts tell them. Anyway, why am I talking about all this? Well, as I understand it, and if you asked any of my close friends or my family, they'll tell you I've been into all this stuff for all my adult life, and I'm an old man now, 76. I started around about the age 20. That's 56 years ago. And I've been around many countries in the world searching for truth. I've read millions of books. Well, maybe that's an exaggeration, but certainly thousands. And I've studied deeply. And I've gone to look at sites. I've tried to find out the truth. And I've been guided. And now I'm going to say the big one here. I am one of those who's been sent to this planet to wake people up in time for big events which are coming. I've not said that before, certainly not in public, but I was sent here to do this job. It doesn't mean I'm better than you, wonderful, than you. Maybe you've been sent as well, There are many people have been sent at this time to try to wake people up because you're living in a very, very dangerous time. You haven't got much time. It's running out. If you wear a wristwatch, you would see it's running out. Everything's going to change, and it's going to change very, very suddenly. It tells us that in the Bible, especially in the Matthew Gospel and in the book of Revelation. And you really, really do need to stop playing around. You've got to stop playing with ideas. Oh, well, the scientists tell us there's no such thing as God. It's all evolution. Look, they lie all the time. And I'm going to give you an example of that. Have you ever heard of the Asteroid Belt? I'm sure you have. There's all these rocks, and there's some bigger planetesimals like Ceres, and there's a few others that are named like that, but mostly it's big rocks floating around in this orbit in between Mars and Jupiter. Now, those of you who've done a little bit of astronomy will probably know there's a law or rule called Boses Law or Boses Rule, which determines planetary spacing. It's not arbitrary. You discover that it was actually an equation that tells you where roughly planets will be in relationship to the sun in terms of distance. Now, they are elliptical orbits, not very elliptical, but they are elliptical, so it varies. But within these sort of bands, it follows this patterning. So you've got Mercury, Venus, Earth, they all fit really tightly. And then you've got Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus and Neptune. They all fit very, very well, except there's a gap. There's a gap between Mars and Jupiter, where there should be a planet with an orbital period around the sun of roughly 5 Earth years. There should be a planet there doing that, but there's nothing. There's just this asteroid belt of rocks. And if you talk to the astronomers, the guys with lots of letters after their names and big telescopes and things, they'll tell you, don't worry, it's just, this was debris left over from the formation of the planet. So it was a disk of dust around the sun, and it sort of coagulated to form planets, but there's some left over, and it coagulated to form these rocks. Now, don't you think that's a crazy idea? And I've got evidence for it being crazy. A while back, someone sent me this. It's a meteorite. And this meteorite, there was lots of light like this come to Earth. There's loads of meteorites, as you probably know. Yeah, this meteorite is made of iron. Now, did that coagulate? Maybe a bigger lump of it, and there's a fragment. No, because you know and I know that you get iron and heavy metals like this in the center of planets. That's where it comes from. So what we have here with the asteroid belt is evidence that there was once a planet there, which is blowing up. It's been destroyed somehow. We don't know how. Was it the Death Star with Darth Vader pressing the button, boom, blowing it up? We don't know. Was it something crashed into it? We don't know. Was it a thunderbolt that destroyed it? We don't know. I mean, people have theories. Of course they do. But we don't know. But the evidence is there, and this is the evidence that something disastrous happened in our solar system a long, long time ago. And as the result of that is there's an asteroid belt. Most of the material seems to have disappeared. It's either been blown out into space and is now, some of it anyway, comets that come around. They look exactly like asteroids when we send spacecraft. They're not dirty snowballs. They're rocky. Some of it maybe ended up in the sun or crashing into other planets like Jupiter, Earth. Some of it maybe was vaporized. We don't know. But we have evidence that there was another planet that disappeared. So we live in a damaged solar system. Now, did that affect us at all, mankind and mankind's evolution and development? And I use that word evolution guardedly because I don't believe that evolution just happens. You know, survival of the fittest just happens. No, it's every creature that exists is created through a special plan. It's in its DNA, and that DNA is too complex. We don't even understand how that is translated into how you grow your arms and legs, or if you have four legs or two. We don't know how that works, what it is in us, in the life ourselves. You know, what is the computer? Think of the DNA as being like a ticker tape. When I started programming computers a long time ago, they used to, some of them had ticker tape or punch cards, but you can imagine the ticker tape going through the computer and it's reading it, and it turns that into actions the computer would take using that code. Now something's doing that with the DNA code, but we don't know what. It's amazing. But do you think that happens just by chance? Of course it doesn't. It's incredibly, incredibly difficult and incredibly complex. We use binary code in our computers, ones and zeros, you probably know that. But in the DNA binary code, they use 4. Yeah? So they maybe use 1, 2, 3, 4, or 0, 1, 2, and 3 to determine what's going on, what the code is to be read. It's a much more complicated thing with more possibilities to it, even than our binary code, which is very simple. So I want you to consider these things, and I want you to understand something. I'm going to show you something else here. Yes. I'm going to show you this one. This was also painted for me by my friend Bengt after I had an extraordinary experience. Rather like St. John there, he had his experience, I had an experience where an eagle appeared to me. An eagle made of light appeared to me and took me out of my body and showed me various things. That's why I dare to say to you that I've been sent here. I had a cosmic experience myself. Now, you're all going to have cosmic experiences when you die. It's just that I had, it's like you read about these people who do die and then they come back and the doctors have thought they were dead and suddenly they come back to life. And they talk about, oh, it's wonderful out there. I've had a great time. I met all my friends, I met family, met Jesus. But they told me, no, you can't come back here yet. You've got things to do back on Earth. Back you go. And then I came back in my body and it's horrible. Yeah. Well, I had that sort of experience, except it wasn't a death experience. It was an initiation experience. Now, you're all going to get something like that when you do die. And you're all going to die. But if you're wise, you will have done the work first. And Jesus warns about this in the Bible. He talks about the virgins. You remember that? The 12 virgins, and they had their lamps and they brought their oil with them. I think 6 brought their oil with them, a little flask, so that the bridegroom's delayed. They were going to meet the wedding party. Perhaps they used to do that in those days. So they had these little lamps that run on oil. And you put the oil in the lamp, you light the wick, and you've got like a candle, I guess. And the 6 had brought the oil with them to top it up, and 6 hadn't. The ones who hadn't got it, I forgot to bring you oil. Can I have some of yours? And the 6 who had got the oil said, no, I'm sorry, we can't give it to you. You have to go back home and get it. If we give you ours, we won't be there in time. The lights will have gone out. So the 6 go back to get their oil, and the 6 who have their oil with them, their lamps are light, meet the bridegroom, and they're taken into the wedding party, and the doors are shut. And then the other 6 come back, and they've got their oil now, their doors are shut. Now, this is a warning about exactly this. The doors are open at the moment. They're going to, it's a possible time for you to graduate and leave this planet and go to higher realms. You can't do it all the time. It doesn't work. You have to keep coming back here again and again and again and again. If you miss the bus, it could be a long time. I remember, I was on a cruise ship once. I was giving lectures. I was on a cruise ship, and they warned everyone and said, look, you've got to be back here before 6 o'clock because we're setting sail at 6. And if you don't get here before then, we're going to sail without you. And you'll be able to catch up. The next port we're going to, it's such and such. But it's going to cost you a lot of money. I hope you've got your credit cards with you, because it's going to cost you a lot of money to fly there to catch up in time to rejoin the cruise. And that's the situation we're at now. You have got to do certain work while you're here. And one of the things you have to do while you're here is get your oil. Get your oil. And Jesus used another analogy as well. He talked about the wedding garment, the garment of light. That you won't be allowed in without a wedding garment. If you come there in your work clothes, they'll tell you to on your bike. You're not coming in here. You've got to be dressed properly for it. Now, the wedding garment is what is esoterically called the astral body. Astral doesn't mean star stuff body, it means body of light. Aster means light. So you've got to have a body of light if you want to join in the wedding in the light sphere. Higher vibration than here. Yeah, up there with the angels, If you want to get in there, you've got to have an astral body. So how are you going to get one of those, for God's sake? Well, you do it through certain practices, religious practices, practical practices. And that's what I'm teaching people, or I'm going to start teaching them in the Invisible College. Now you can say, stuff it, Adrian, I don't believe you. You're just a mountebank, another big voice. Yeah, fine, I don't care. I don't care if you don't subscribe to my channel even. Do you know that? I'm not going to ask you to subscribe. Don't subscribe. I don't need you. But if you want what I've given, you'd be very wise to take it. You'd be very wise to go through the videos I put out on YouTube for free, because they will help you. You'd be even wiser if you join the college, because I'm going to be teaching them things, I'm already doing so, that I don't put out to the general public. I don't throw the pearls before swine. Why should I? I don't care. If you don't want to come and work with me, why should I be worried about it? It's not my business. I've given you the invitation. I've offered the situation for you. It's up to you what you do with it. But I will warn you, whatever you do, make sure you do something. Make sure you make your peace with God for a start, and with Jesus Christ. Because if you find yourself at that time, when Jesus comes back here, and he's coming, actually he's already here in spirit, I've met him. But if you don't do anything about it, if you turn up, you haven't got a wedding garment, you haven't got any oil, you say, well, let me in, it's me, I'm Joe, let me in. You're going to be sorely disappointed. And you're going to find you're going to have to go through a whole other cycle This is the good scenario. The good scenario is you get another chance on Earth to go through 26,000 years until it comes back to here again with the Stargate open. Fancy that? How many lives would you fit in then? Going to be a lot, isn't it? And some of those lives you're going to be really poor, you're going to be scrubbing the floor, cleaning the toilets. You might have one or two where you have a bit of money in your pocket and but you've got to make sure also that you don't become even more deviant than you are now. You've got to make sure you don't develop pride. If you're rich and you start looking down your nose, oh, those serfs there, they don't deserve anything. We'll have all the money for ourselves. If you're like that, you're not going to get up there. And if you're rude and unpleasant, if you're cruel, if you abuse children, forget it. You're done. You've got a really hard task ahead of you if you're going to get back into the good books. You might not even be able to. Jesus himself said, those who abuse children, didn't use that word, but those who abuse children, it would be better for them if they'd had a millstone put round their neck and they're thrown into the sea at birth, than what will happen to them after that. Warning. So, what are we seeing in the world at the moment is challenges, and the challenges are very specific, very specific to particular nations and particular situations. We British have always been very proud. We love our land, we love our island, and we're very proud that we're something special, probably lost tribes of Israel, but we did good. We had the biggest empire ever. We're special. Well, now we're being challenged with that. All these people dumping up on our shores. Our island is being taken from us. And it's happening at a time when we have a particularly weak, stupid government. This is karma. This is karma. We've got to work out how we put on sackcloth and ashes and ask for forgiveness for this, for what we've done in the past, so that our nation can be saved. And it's happening the same with other nations too. France, Germany, America, it's happening all over. Russia thought they were going to, Putin thought they were going to walk into Ukraine, take us, I won't even take a clean pair of underpants with me because be back before nightfall. We'll be in Kyiv and then, we'll take it over. 3.5 years later and 1 million casualties plus, and they're still there. All those tanks destroyed, all those planes destroyed, all those people's lives ruined on both sides. And that is hubris being punished. The hubris. We've got the biggest country in the world, We're really, really strong. You better watch out. We've got atom bombs as well. It's hubris. And that hubris is being punished severely. So I'll leave this with you. Just a few words. You ignore me, write comments. I'd like to hear what you say. If you feel like subscribe to the channel, do so. I would be pleased. But I don't care if you don't. It's not going to break my heart if you don't. I don't care. Join the college. It won't cost you much, £5. If you don't want to pay that, well, okay, I don't care. I've got other things to do. There's millions of people on this planet. I've got plenty more to keep me occupied. And I really don't care. I've got my astral body. I've already made one. So it's down to you if you want to get one. So there you have it, my friends. And, for those who really are my friends, I look forward to chatting with you again. And we've got lots more to do. I'm going to do the next episode in the Grail series. I'm working on it now. So thank you very much. We'll speak again.